What's good, people? Okay, I want to bring this fact up. This comes from the ground studies that I did. They got QR scan codes on the island that I was at. This was originally called Etowah. So this is how Etowah is pronounced. And these are the indigenous tribes of the low country of the Carolinas, right? They were on the coast, and this is who essentially were the first indigenous tribes to come in contact with the European, right? And who essentially granted them access to the land. Okay, so here it says the first written record of the Etowah occurs in the reports of the Spanish captain Francisco Fernandez de Isiga, who sailed from St. Augustine, Florida, and entered Kiowa, right, or today's Charleston Harbor in 1605, and in August 1609. Both reports make careful notes of the names of the tribes in the area, which included the Kiowa, the Siwi, the Santi, and the Edisto, and Astono, and the Etowah. So right here, they have, look how they have it pronounced. Yipano, Ipewan. So that O would be silent, right? Ipanwan. While anchored in 1607, the Antioch Indian who claimed to have visited the English settlement in Virginia seen many people one fort and was taken prisoner and interrogated at length. The earliest English reports refer to the occupants of present-day Daniel Island to Etowah, 1672, and described them as living on the island. I can't see what that says. Something of the Wando and Etowah and the Cooper River and the Etowah River. I'm sorry, bro. I'm getting used to this technology. This shit. Check my wave pattern out. So was this the original texture of the Etowah? So like I said, these Etowah, they were steadfast supporters of the newly arrived English settlers, and they were counted among the tribes that pledged support to defend them against the Spanish and Indian allies who landed on Kiowa Island near the mouth of the Stono River in August of 1670, just months after the English landed at Albemarle Point, right? So I've been here, and at Albemarle Point, they have a statue of the chief. Golly, bro. What the fuck? The treaties benefits on both sides. Both the English benefited for trade and commerce, and the Aboriginals, they benefited for the simple fact that they had somebody to trade with. You feel me? People. All right, so I came across this video the other day. Shout out to this guy. He did a crazy drop talking about how we were, the original. Everybody came from, the Americas, and the Roman Empire really started here, all the et ceteras. But he brought up this place where I went, the excavation site, and it was like I had to screenshot this really fast because it was like a really quick clip, but he had that on there, and so that's where that last video was at, and I'm gonna show you some more footage from there here. Okay, so this is my YouTube channel. It's just like my Instagram, Daryl Q Slade. So y'all, let's get those subscribers up. I was watching that J. Cole interview earlier. It's pretty good. What he was saying about fatherhood and just having an hour to yourself, bro. Like, it's just real, you know what I mean? When you're trying to create and, just doing these ground studies, it's not easy, bro. So I don't ask for donations. I just want subscribers. But this is from the last post. This is the archaeological site that was on the last clip. So that's an actual excavation site. This is at Albemarle Point. Okay, look at me trying to get up in there. Hey, bro. I gotta go out there a day that they open, so we can talk to them and do all that research, for real. But yeah, man, what you think they done found out there? Well, let's look. So here it says that archaeologists from Brockton and Associates had a cultural resource consultant company who has been working on the island for the past 17 years, and they recovered Native American, but we're just gonna say indigenous Aboriginal artifacts such as clay pottery pieces from dozens of sites they have investigated. Many of these artifacts date to a period called the Cromeric Late Archaic Era, which covers a time frame from 2500 to 1000 BC. So y'all could look this time period up for more research. And then it says that Native Americans. So the point I wanted to make was the artifact of the pottery. So let's say my Nino on me like Wando. So you see Wando and the Itaewon right there. Put the pounds in the trash can. Aisha doing the dishes. She cleaning the pottery. So it says Indians along the Wando River, right? 12,000 years ago made distinctive pottery from limestone. So the a lot of the monuments in DC is built from limestone. The Tennessee State Capitol, limestone, right? And the pyramids in Egypt, limestone. But here it says right here, we had clay from the. So we always been here, and I'm gonna bring this. This is a fact. I'm gonna bring this next facts up, but the limestone is important. A lot of this comes from the Northwest Georgia mountains, near where my daughter was born. It's called the Omorechi Stretch. It's like the beginning of the Appalachian, which goes from Northwest Georgia all the way up to Maine. Okay, so there's a lot. They got a lot of limestone out of there. They got a lot of copper out of there. There's copper basins in those mountains. And I could pull some facts up on that at a later time, but we'll be here all day. But yeah, this is really important. That this is proof of our existence, right? This is proof that we were here. Pottery shards and exhibit impress and stamp designs. All right. So again, I want to bring this fact back up. If I didn't already, I put it on my story and I posted it on my Facebook. It says the forgotten slave era. So how most of us thinks that we were slaves that were brought over here from Africa, this begs to differ. It says 3.4 million indigenous people was enslaved in the colonies between 1670. Now, remember I brought up that Kassaku joint. So he was the chief of the tribe, of the Kasabo tribe, which was a part of the Itaewon, branches. These were the tribes that were here again in the Low Country, right? Who essentially allowed the colonizers to come here. There's more facts at Albemarle Point that talks about how Indians held slaves too. So of this 3.4 million of the indigenous people enslaved, You probably had indigenous slave owners too before colonization. And it says that Charlestown was the epicenter of the Indian slave trade. Now, I want to bring this is what we would call supporting evidence, okay? Now, right here, it talks about the slave auctions. It says some Africans were sold near the exchange, but most of the people sold here were born in the U.S. And when they say in the U.S., we just mean Carolina, precisely North America, making this a key site for the domestic slave trade, right? So that's very important that we know that. It's so important. This is why we have to peel back the black tape and look at where our roots derive from. It's very important, right? When we come back here, it hit different. So the slave exchanges were breaking the community and the political institution, right? So again, I got these facts from my ground study from Etowah Allen. So here it says, here's the contemporary times. This is not far off from where we are now. So remember it said that the whole point was to break it up, to break up our community. And in order to break up the community, you got to break up the family. So in 1978, you had the Indian Child Welfare Act. It says 25 to 33% of Indian children was removed from their home. Why? Probably because their father was in prison, probably because of separation in the houses, right? And it says in South Carolina, they're still fighting this Indian Child Welfare Act, right? So this is when you get the benefits and things like that. They started building the apartments smaller so the father couldn't fit in there. These are all, this was all the reconstruction, during the Reconstruction era. Then you had the Indian Civil Rights Act, which was the Bill of Rights, which extended to, it's a Native Americans, but we know it was the Aboriginals. Also, you have the rights of indigenous people, which I went all throughout the triad, reading all 50, I think it's 54, 56, 46 articles in there. I read all of that throughout the region of what y'all call Forsyth County. Also here, when you look at the modern wards, it says you got the volunteers. So Tennessee is the volunteer state. Is this why? Right? And it says that a lot of non-citizens, so here we are, we think that we citizens, but we actually not. And you can look that shit up in the, oh damn, I look better, my fault. I had a little smear on my joint. That's why I look like a smoke cloud. But it says thousands of Indians, this is facts on Indians, served in the World War I as non-citizens. So that's proof that we aren't citizens, right? So I want to, again, this is why it's important for you to know who you are, because this is Article 1, Section 10 of the Constitution, all right? And it says that no state shall enter any treaty, right, alliance, or confederation, or grant letters of marque or reprisal, coin money, emit bills of credit, or make anything but gold and silver the tender of debt. Okay? So all of this commercial activity that these states are doing is de facto. And then it goes on to say all of the collections is de facto because they're not collecting. First of all, the debt isn't valid, but then you aren't paying with gold and silver unless it's something I don't know about. But right here, it says they should not pass any bill of attainder or ex post facto law. So a good example of the ex post facto law is how when you relocate to another region and near a state, they say that you have 30 days to get a DL from that said state. But that would be an ex post facto law. When we look into the definition of the ex post facto, it says it's a law passed after the occurrence of a fact or commission of an act which respectively changes the legal consequences or retaliations of such fact or deed. So they're making it criminal now, meaning that they can lock you up if you are living in one state but you have a DL in another state. Do you see what I'm saying? That would be an ex post facto law, and it contradicts the Constitution, right? So no state law can contradict the Constitution. And then here it says most states contain similar prohibitions against ex post factos law, because the state law cannot trump the Constitution. The Constitution cannot trump God's law. That's just what it is. And so that's why you have the First Amendment. Okay. Right. So this is where the fifth. So this is where it says the Bill of Rights extended to the Native Americans, which is you, the indigenous people. Like really, we just talking about humanity, but we also talking about pedigree, right? So you have your right to move freely on the land, right? And you don't have any contracts with the state, so therefore you're not obligated to do what the state is telling you to do because of your rights, right? And under the Fifth Amendment, due process, freedom of speech, for you to declare who you are and where you come from. That's due process, right? And so a lot of us are getting hemmed up under this, under these ex post factos laws that they created that gets a lot of us in a jammy, right? So this is very important to see where we are. You got your right to travel, okay? That comes from your right to travel derives from the Magna Carta, right? So that's going back to 1215. And let's go, I will pull it up out the book, but I'm going to get it here. We're going to go to, Article 6 of the Constitution. Okay, this is what you call the Supremacy Clause. It says that all treaties that were made or which shall be made under the authority of the United States shall be the supreme law of the land. So up here it says that before the adoption, the Constitution was adopted. A good book to get is Indian Givers by Jack Weatherford, because it's going to tell you about how the Constitution actually came from our confederation, our Indian confederations. We had similar governing, what you would call indentures, okay? And how we governed ourselves on the land. And a lot of it was vocalized, right? So it says that what happened before the adoption of this Constitution shall be valid against the United States. So therefore, any law, any declaration, any so the Magna Carta, any charters that supersede or that precede the United States Constitution. So yeah, everything that came before the Constitution is valid, right? Any law that came before, if you can prove it. That's why they say ignorance of the law is no excuse. So it's very important for the founding of youth to study law. You don't have to go to law school to be a lawyer. Abraham Lincoln did it. Abraham Lincoln did not go to law school, but he was an effective lawyer. And he fought. One of the most prime cases is the William Dungy case. And in my studies, I'm tying the William Dungy case to Jucelia Dungy, because her name on her book is Dungee, but it was Dungy. And so again, that's a whole nother conversation for another time. But the point that I want to make is that the Constitution is a very powerful document that protects your rights if you know how to interpret it. And so this is my ground study. This is just some of my ground studies that I just wanted to share with you for documentation